Morning Show with Declan Meehan on East Coast FM.
With thanks to Codling Wind Park, supporting local communities and generating a greener Ireland.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. We're in Greystones this morning. We're actually in a gorgeous setting here. We're in a particular place run by Tiglin, and it is absolutely gorgeous because we're looking at the window. I'd love to have this house, but anyway, there you go. You can sit in the front here looking out at the sea and the gorgeous aspect that it is of Greystones itself, but also the positioning of this particular building, Carraig. So we're delighted to be here, and thank you to Aubrey McCarthy, who gave us an invitation and a welcome. Thanks for coming in, Aubrey. Thanks. And just to say to everybody today, yes, we are broadcasting for the next 2 hours here, and Tiglin aims to be a beacon of hope for those battling addiction, homelessness and other life-controlling issues, and has transformed hundreds of lives by investing in each individual's potential. And today we'll hear about the challenges faced as well as the heartwarming and life-changing work being done at Tiglin. And we'll hear from the passionate staff and volunteers, and we will hear from people as well who have benefited from all that happens here at Tiglin. So first of all, as I say, co-founder of Tiglin, Aubrey McCarthy, is here. Hello to you, Aubrey.
Good morning, Declan, and thanks for having me.
Welcome to your own place, which is great. So people say, oh, Tiglin, oh yeah, Greystones and the lighthouse and all that sort of stuff. But what's the origin of Tiglin?
So, Tiglin started. I had addiction in my own family growing up, and my own family was a bit chaotic, and I was part of custody battles along with my 3 siblings, etc. And I always said, when I start to earn money, I'll see if I can make a difference. I bought a bus, a coach, along with a friend of mine, Phil Thompson, and we converted it into a restaurant, and we called it the No Bucks Cafe. We used to use the Starbucks logo with No Bucks written on it. How we weren't sent to jail, I don't know. But we got permission from the community police to pull up on O'Connell Street under Cleary's clock, and it was a big 40-foot bus. So I got a bus licence to do that 4 nights a week. And I just wanted to see, could we make a difference with the people who are living on the street that are vulnerable, and a lot who had an addiction. So that's how we started. That was in 2006. And from there, the people that we were reaching started to it resonated with them, what we do, and they started to come on board, and a lot of those people became not only service users, but then they became staff. They went on to college, they got housing, they got married. I've been at hundreds of weddings, and you could see their lives were changing. So then we went along and we went to the AIB Bank in 2008, and we got a 100...
Good time, 2008, fantastic.
We got a 110% mortgage. Do you remember those times?
Yeah.
And we bought the National Mountaineering Centre, which was called Tiglin. And that's why the name on the gate...
That's why it's called Tiglin.
And the name on the gate was Tiglin. So that's why we called it.
Because I was trying to figure it out, and I was saying Tig, house, and Lin might be either pool, but it might be together. So it's our house together.
Our house together. There's 2 interpretations. One is it's up in the Devil's Glen in Wicklow, the original Tiglin. So it was House of the Glen.
Right. And
the other interpretation is our house. So there's 2. Tiglin, the original place, was in the grounds of Glanmore Castle. And we bought the manager's house, the stable yards and all the rest. So the first Tiglin Centre is surrounded by 3,000 acres of forestry. Most of your listeners will know it, outside of Ashford. And it is just an amazing therapeutic site in itself.
And the mission that you were on, I mean, it was word of mouth, first of all, with the bus, was it? That people start arriving and saying, well, this is quite good for the community of people living on the streets. Is that the way it works?
We tried to do it, we tried to handle homelessness with a bit of dignity. Okay, so we had live music. We had purple leather seating. We had LED lighting going up the bus. It was like something that you'd see in Amsterdam. But it actually resonated with the people that were on the street. They came on and they became part of a community. And I think that's what made the difference. Our CEO, Phil Thompson, who's been on with you regularly, Declan, he's quirky. He's in his designs, he's fashionable, but he certainly adds a bit of flavour. And I think that's what resonated with the people. But at the same time, we were dealing with serious issues.
Yes, indeed. And, I mean, the numbers of people on the streets then compared to now.
Initially, we started off maybe feeding 20, 30 people every night. And you're going to talk to some of those people today that I met on the streets all those years ago who were homeless and living in parks, and now they're part of what we do in a big way. But interesting, I remember one of the first nights we were giving out sandwiches, and I had gone up and we had cling film sandwiches, ham and butter, the most awful things, and this homeless guy came up to me, and I think the sandwiches had fallen into the coffee and the coffee had fallen into the sugar, and he said to me, he was a real Dublin lad, and he said, listen, are you looking for good sandwiches? And he told me where I could go to get sandwiches. So I just thought, right, we have to improve our offering. The community of Wicklow, the community of Kildare, where I'm from, they got together, and for the last 16 years we have been providing, a 5-star service to what we do on the streets in Dublin. And then from there we have opened 7 centres as well. So there's a lot going on. Right. It's a busy time.
But there's one thing about supplying comfort late at night and sandwiches and whatever, to actually in some sort of intervention as regards addiction or whatever. Giving somebody who's addicted maybe a sandwich, right, it's very nice to have a sandwich because I'm hungry, but my life needs to change in some way.
And that's what Tiglin does well. What we try to do is we try to be authentic. Anybody in Dublin, you won't go without food. There's loads of food offerings. But what Tiglin does is we offer more than food. We offer conversation. We've therapists. We have, the guys will explain, we've now bingo, we've a barber, we've a doctor. We've all of these on site in our homeless services. And also even our centres, our residential centres, like they have saunas, they've plunge pools. We've done it unto excellence because we want to make sure that the person is looked after in a holistic way while dealing with whatever life-controlling addictions they might have.
Right. Explain to us the function of the Lighthouse in Pearse Street and this building here in Greystones.
So the building you're in now in Greystones, I mentioned to you about the Tiglin Residential Centre in the mountains. Well, when the guys had graduated from there, we realised that they'd an issue with housing. And they can't go back to the places where they got sick in the first place. So they need some place to transition and heal. And so Greystones was the place. And I started renting this in 2008 off a religious organisation. And then we went to buy it 10 years later with the local TDs, Stephen Donnelly, Simon Harris, John Brady. They all got together. Now, Stephen is going to be in shortly. And they fought to get this over the line. And so the building you're in now, it offers 30 studio apartments to men that have come from the men's centre. And then we have another one around the corner called Coolnagrania, which is a new aftercare facility for women. So then you mentioned the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse, the bus got too small. We're now dealing with 500 to 600 people a day. Could you imagine a queue on O'Connell Street with 500 to 600 outside a bus? So the Lighthouse is a facility on Pearse Street. I'm the chair of a very old charity called Dublin Christian Mission. It was set up in 1828, and it was set up to help people with the famine. It was a medical mission, and they had a building. And I said, well, let's combine the two for this service, and it worked very well. But now, at the Lighthouse, you'll see a queue going down Pearse Street. Homeless, addicted, broken people who are just looking for help. And the building itself now is nearly not fit for purpose. It's too small. But you're going to be interviewing one of our managers from the Lighthouse shortly, and he himself was a service user outside the Lighthouse in the queue, and now he's managing the whole thing.
Well, tell us what the homelessness is like in Dublin.
You're dealing with people. On the news you'll see a lot about tents, and you'll see a lot about asylum seekers. At the Lighthouse you actually meet the guys who are homeless. You meet the guys that are living under the bridge. You meet the guys that are the tent statistics as such. I was talking to one guy the other day, and he'd lost his brother in Gaza, and he had fled through Lebanon, Turkey, Greece, Italy, France, and then over here. And just the story of trying to get protection. And that's why it's important to focus on the individuals. And I know your programme today is focusing on the individuals that Tiglin works with. But homelessness is awful. If you can imagine a lot of the hostels that the people are in, they are asked to leave at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then they walk on the boardwalk all day. So until they can get back into that same hostel at night time, if they're lucky enough to get a hostel. If they don't have a hostel, they come to the Lighthouse, which is the only service that's working late in the evening. And they, if they're going to be destitute and living on the street, we'll make sure they get a sleeping bag and a tent. But we prefer to get them into a hostel, to get them into accommodation. And that's the key, the accommodation shortage.
And finally, Aubrey, a solution to this? Build more houses. That's, we hear all this. What about modular homes? What about a place to pitch tents and things? I mean, you hear all this talk about it.
I think we're trying to play catch up here. I think we were all caught off guard. We didn't know about the Ukrainian war. We didn't know all of this. But if you look at the NATO conferences, even 10 years ago, they warned that this was coming down the track. They warned about migration. They warned about climate change. And they warned about climate migration. So all of this was forewarned. So it's just the people in power back then, and I mean internationally, just thought, it's not going to happen on our watch. Now it's happening.
Yes. Well, with that thought, we will have a chat with people who have been contributing to Tiglin, Carraig, over the while in a second. But Aubrey McCarthy, co-founder of Tiglin, thank you very much indeed for inviting us in, and thanks for your... Yeah, we're at Tiglin in Greystones, and we're joined on the programme now by twins, Jay and Alan Bobinak. I don't know them, and if I was introduced to them probably in a week's time, I would confuse them. But there you go. They're both very welcome, and thank you both for coming in. And they went from homelessness to earning a master's degree with the help of Tiglin. And they came to Ireland 8 years ago, where they slept rough in St. Stephen's Green in the Phoenix Park. And they met Aubrey when Aubrey was driving the No Books bus, and Aubrey introduced them to Tiglin. You're both very welcome. Thank you very much for coming in. I'll start with this gentleman on my left, and you are...
my name is Jay.
You're Jay. Thanks, Jay. That story that I mentioned there about coming to Ireland, where did you come from?
So myself and Alan, we were born in Croatia. We were born on an island in Croatia. We come from, you could say, a bit of a dysfunctional background. So we grew up, didn't have very much. So when we turned 18, we decided to leave the country. Now, a few years prior to us turning 18, Croatia joined the European Union, which kind of allowed us to have opportunity to move to all these different countries. So for no particular reason, mainly English language, we chose Ireland. And actually, Alan was the first person we sent over. Alan came, he was 18 years of age. He took a flight. We worked over the summer on a parking lot. So we just saved enough money to buy a plane ticket. And then Alan flew here with no more, just himself, no extra money. He landed, and that's how our story started.
Yeah. So Alan, the next part is you're off the plane in Dublin Airport, and you're in a country nobody speaks Croatian. So the next step is what?
Yeah, so I had a suitcase that I was dragging everywhere I went, and the plan was to. Because I didn't know anything about life, I didn't know about how to find work. I didn't know. Yeah, it was very, very young at the time. So I was first thing I did is I created a CV, and then I was going to all these different places that had a sign saying they're looking for people to work. All the while dragging the suitcase behind me. Then I would also go to the Dublin Library, and I would apply for jobs, and I would do that every day on repeat. First place I slept was at the Grand Canal. Interestingly enough, the crisis that we're dealing with, the migrant crisis at the minute, they were actually sleeping there. I think there was like 50 tents exactly where I slept. And yes, it took me a long time to find work. It took me about 6 months. Before that, sort of, I got a day's work. It was a company called Keelings. I was picking fruit. And then I made about 50 euros, and then I used that money to get Jay over here. And yes, I think we were appreciative of everything that was here. You know, kind of what Aubrey was saying earlier, there's no shortage of food. So you have, even if you live on the street, you have access to showers, you have access to food, you have access to clothes. All you have to do is find work. Easier said than done, but eventually it worked out. And 6 months after, I started working as a kitchen porter. And then at the time we were sleeping in Phoenix Park, and I was just saving all the money that I was able to save. And then a little bit down the road, I think it was April of 2016, myself and Jay met Aubrey at the No Bucks Cafe, And I think he definitely did see potential in us. And then shortly after, himself and the Tiglin CEO, Phil Thompson, were able to get us a transitional housing in Dublin, and then we started college, and then everything kind of progressed from there.
And what's your qualification now?
Oh yes, we're all on, both of us are on our second masters.
So I think back in those days, one of the first things they did for us while moving into the housing was they sent us for an educational assessment, and in that, the guy that did it, he kind of said, "Oh, you guys are clever, and you should consider doing some of these bits." So back in those days, we chose courses we were eligible for, which were entry-level modules, and we started that in different community colleges, and we kind of got on really well. And was it a surprise for us? Sure, it was, because when we were children in school, we didn't kind of do very well. Life at home wasn't great and all that type of stuff. So we did well, and then eventually we did more and more, and then we got an opportunity through a Tiglin initiative with Southeastern Technological University to do a degree program, which was amazing. We did that. Was it a challenge? Sure, but we had everything.
But you grasped it because you got the opportunity and you had the talent to exploit it. Alan, I'm curious, when you were saying that you access to showers and things like that, but living in the Phoenix Park, how was that?
So yeah, there's about 5 or 6 different homeless services in Dublin, and based on your needs, if you need a shower, I can tell you there's definitely 2 places you can go to. If you need food between 10 and 1, let's say, you go to one place. So kind of they cover a wide range of services. But generally, and I think this is very important when we're talking about the Lighthouse, generally they cover Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And then come 6 o'clock, the last place closes around 6 o'clock, and then you're just on the streets. Especially when it's cold and wet, there's nowhere to go. So at the Lighthouse, we're open 7 days a week, day and night, and especially in the evenings and the weekends, it gets very, very hectic, because especially with the numbers of people that are sleeping on the street, everyone is coming to us. But the system that we had access to, everyone has access to right now. So.
Yeah, very good. Keelings is interesting, because actually I used to work in Keelings myself for a summer, picking fruit, and thought it was hard work, I can tell you, but picking up the fruit and get a few quid and that sort of stuff all those years ago. But you had to make your way all the way out from, they're a good bit out of Dublin. How did you make your way back to Dublin from there?
In retrospect, everything sounds simple. I just worked for a day. But it wasn't like that, because it didn't have anything to my name. For the longest time, I had zero money. So there was this volunteer. They had a soup run at the Central Bank at the time, and I was talking to her, and she said, she'll give me a lift. And it was all the way at St. Margaret's, next to the airport. And then I was working there all day, and then I was the last person to leave. I walked out. I thought there was going to be people, cars, to give me a lift. Nobody was there, so I had to walk from there to the city. I was walking alongside the motorway, and then the guys picked me up and gave me a lift of swords, and then I walked to Dublin.
Oh my God. Yeah, you've had your challenges. So, lads, where are we now? Jay, where are we?
Well, I think, he's talking about starting off. I think when we got into the Tiglin care, per se, the transition housing was great. But even more so, I think, from the educational support, there was also sort of upskilling opportunities, because Tiglin runs, we call them community employment scheme. They're upskilling schemes. So we joined that actually in 2017, and in that they helped us with different career opportunities, different trainings and things like that. And then since then we've both progressed really well. We've both done different roles within Tiglin. Alan's currently the manager of the Lighthouse, so that's going really well. That's one of the busiest services, frontline service, responding to, as he was saying, 500 people a day. Myself, I actually ended up managing that employment scheme, and then I managed the center, and now I'm doing communications. So we're a big part of Tiglin, I'd like to think, and we do use our insights to just try and contribute and make this a better place, because sometimes I walk down this road down here and I look at this blue house And sometimes I think it's too good to be true, but it is true. And I think it is true because we keep going, we make it true. We run this organization that builds people, and it's a very big responsibility and it's a very big job, but everybody's in it, and we're on it together.
Yeah, well, for fantastic work. And Alan, finally to you, I mean, the challenges we read about of people arriving in this country and setting up tents and things like that and looking for some support, and Tiglin and the Lighthouse giving them that support, and you being manager of the Lighthouse. I mean, day to day, it's difficult, is it?
I mean, it's extremely difficult. I can't emphasize enough how big this, crisis is, because there's so many new faces. You can't even remember people sometimes. So on average, my estimate is there's 15 new people on the street every day. So you add that up, that's 100 people a week, 400 a month, so on and so forth. So we're just dealing with this huge increase in numbers, and we're just trying to do our best. That's also put pressure on every aspect of the building, look at the kitchen, look at the amount of clothes, we're out of clothes, toiletries. We also operate basically on volunteers. The core team is very small, maybe 5 people. So we need more volunteers, we need everything. And as Aubrey was saying as well, the building. I mean, it's you have queue of 100 people outside waiting to get in. The building is full inside. And as soon as the people are finished with the meal, they have to move on. So that's what we're dealing with on the ground.
Okay, so you're dealing with the aftermath of this crisis rather than being anyway involved in policy on the crisis. But anyway, Jay and Alan, thank you very much indeed for telling us, and well done on all the great work that you're doing with Tiglin, and well done on the achievement of, not being great academically at school and then ending up with a master's degree and all that hard work of living in those conditions, living rough and things. So well done, lads, and great to meet you. Thank you very much coming into us. It is an outside broadcast we're doing this morning from Tiglin in Greystones, and joining us now is Brendan Herson, and Tiglin helped out Brendan while he was battling a gambling and drug addiction. Hello to you, Brendan.
Hello, how's things?
Good morning to you. Thanks for coming in. How are you now these days?
I'm very good today. It's a completely new life than where I was 3 or 4 years ago, But I'm doing very well today.
Right, so you're from Galway, and how was life before Tiglin?
So I suppose, to give you a brief background, I would have grown up just outside Galway City, and I would have had a fairly normal childhood, fairly normal family, fairly normal upbringing. Finished school, finished Leaving Cert, went to college, and I suppose around the age of 18, I developed kind of it was a habit of playing poker, going to the casino after nights out and things like that, and that developed into kind of an addiction. I would have always worked. I finished school around 2007. I worked in a factory in Galway for 13 years. Looking back, I think that kind of enabled me in a way, because it kind of fed my addiction. So I wouldn't have been always at a really low edge point. I would have been highs and lows throughout my 20s. But the gambling really was really holding me back. It was holding me back in an education side of view, and it was holding me back, I suppose, just achieving anything worthwhile in life. I was living from week to week throughout all of my 20s.
And because you were successful at work, we'll say, you were able to fund it. Yeah. And cover it up, not only to you, but to others. Yeah,
so the harms of a gambling addiction is that it's very hidden. Some people very close to you might have an inkling, but they don't know the true extent of it, And I suppose that's where shame and guilt come in, and they play a big part, in a gambling addiction. So it's very hidden, And I suppose around my mid-20s, I would have kind of started to use drugs, as a coping mechanism for the highs and lows of gambling. Now that started off fairly innocently with cannabis after work. I'd have smoke a bit of cannabis, but over the years it escalated into cocaine and tablets and eventually heroin. And
was there a point you realised, hold on a second, this really can't go on? Or, did you suddenly stop, or did some incident happen that prompted you to think,
Yeah, like I suppose,
could happen to me?
I suppose there would have been ups and downs, and I suppose around the end of 2019, with the end of our relationship, I knew I was in trouble, A heroin addiction as well was also kept secret, along with a cocaine addiction, and everything was kept secret, and it was just starting to pile on top of my mental health, So at the end of our relationship, and the sudden thought of, I was physically addicted to heroin now every day, and no one knew about it, and I still was holding down a job, and I suppose the shame and the stigma about coming clean, it felt like it was too much, you know what I mean? Coming clean to family and close friends about what was going on, I felt I couldn't do it. I felt kind of had to do it on my own. So then 2020 then, COVID, and that really, really hampered whatever sort of recovery I was trying to make. Like, I tried the meetings, I tried the doctors and stuff, you know what I mean, and they were kind of keeping me together a bit. But COVID then really, everything really escalated. So the isolation and the addiction really went downhill,
And for people that care about you, and I'm talking about other people who've found themselves in a similar situation, are there any sort of warning signs that they could have in order to, I won't say intervene, but help in some way? Or would you have pushed away any help and seen it as interference in what you were doing in your life?
I suppose the shame and the guilt was what killed me, I never, my parents or my family wouldn't have known what heroin was, you know what I mean? My close friends or anything wouldn't have known. It's not on the streets really in Galway, there's no open dealing or anything like that. It would be nothing compared to Dublin, And I suppose it was very scary, it was a very scary time in my life. And it was really debilitating, warning signs, apart from the obvious, you know what I mean, the drugs escalated, you know what I mean, I just wasn't honest, you know what I mean, I didn't reach out, and I wasn't honest, and I suppose I was kind of enabling in the fact that I was holding down a job throughout all my addiction, you know what I mean, and with the heroin addiction, I wasn't using any intravenous needles or anything, so as a point of acceptance, was I really addicted to it, you know what I mean, but then when I needed it every day, it was a very scary feeling, I remember being in work and people would think I was on drugs or there was something wrong with me if I didn't have my fix, you know what I mean, so it was really holding me together.
Right. You felt it gave you normality or something?
No, but it really did, you know what I mean, if I didn't have my fix, say in the morning, I probably wouldn't be able to do any sort of work, whereas if I had my fix I was able to go in and work, you know, and that was a scary point. You know what I mean? Obviously, the financial side of it was scary too, along with the gambling. It was a scary time in my life, and I suppose COVID really brought it all to the fore. Around 2021, then I was in a really bad way, and still nobody knew about it. And I decided to go on. Went to the doctor, and I told her what was going on. So I went on to a methadone maintenance program. Still nobody knew. My family didn't know. So at this stage, I was going into Galway City, getting methadone, and then going to work. That was a scary time too. But my mental health was really, really deteriorating. I was suicidal. I suppose I was at a rock bottom in my life. I didn't see any hope. Didn't see any way out. So I contacted, I suppose, local services, national services, I suppose, for suicide prevention, PH House and things like that. And I would have actually gone into hospital, and I have to tell them, I'm feeling very low, I'm feeling suicidal, and sit and wait. So I had to do that 3 times in 10 days. And I suppose with the mental health services in Ireland, you'd nearly want to jump and survive before you're treated seriously, you know what I mean? So I didn't jump, thank God, but I got a bit of hope when a friend of mine had heard about Tiglin. Now, my doctor didn't even know about Tiglin in Galway at the time, So I remember going into her and saying, I heard about this place, Tiglin. I didn't know anything about it, but a recent graduate had told me about it, and I suppose that was a little bit of hope that I latched onto, you know, and here I am today.
Yeah, well, congratulations to it, and I know that you lost a friend of yours recently, Kyle, so there's dangers out there, and there's...
Yeah, like I have a heart for helping people now, like in the job I'm doing now and in the career I'm choosing to go down is to help people, you know. And I have a heart for helping people, and unfortunately in this line of work, and we lose a lot of people, like, you know, and it was very hard. We lost Kyle, it was actually my birthday, 5th of December there, and it was very hard, like, you know. I would have done the programme with Kyle, I would have worked with him on construction last year, and I would have heard all his hopes and dreams, like, you know, and it was the shame and the guilt and the stigma of falling back, you know, that really killed him. And that's, you know, that's the point to make from it. You know, it's the shame and the guilt that will kill you.
Thanks very much indeed, Brendan, for sharing all that with us. Condolences to you on losing Kyle, and thanks for coming in and telling us all this morning. Thank you. It's Brendan Herson there. We're in Tiglin. We're live this morning on the morning show. Back in just a second.
WhatsApp or text East Coast FM now. 087 77 11 103.
East Coast FM.
Love the Fiat 500? You've got to meet its big sister, the all-new Fiat 600. With the same iconic Italian styling, it's got more space and way more tech, like driver's heated massage seats, so you can top up La Dolce Vita anytime. From €29,995, available in hybrid and full electric. Test drive the new Fiat 600 at John Lane Motors, Rathnew, County Wicklow. Price excludes delivery and related charges. Massage seats come with La Prima. Visit fiat.ie for full T's and C's.
Beautiful sky blues, striking sunsets and breathtaking views. Get that holiday feeling at home with a trip to Morgan Doyle's in Arklow. Explore our ingenious room-by-room settings, complete with colourful sitting room suites, stunning tables and chairs, superior beds and bedding, carpets, flooring, blinds and more. Morgan Doyle's is a breath of fresh air at home. Free delivery, free assembly. Open Monday to Saturday from 9, closed on Sundays. See morgandoyles.com.
Don't miss Gary Lydon in A Handful of Stars by Billy Roach, playing for 1 week only at Pavilion Theatre Dunleary from Tuesday the 18th to Saturday the 22nd of June. With a cast of 7, directed by Conal Morrison, this play is Irish theatre at its very best. A Handful of Stars by Billy Roach. Book now at paviliontheatre.ie.
The Morning Show with Declan Meehan on East Coast FM.
With thanks to Codling Wind Park, supporting local communities and generating a greener Ireland.
East Coast FM.
Morning show at East Coast FM, and that's where we are at Tiglin. Carraig here in Greystones. We're joined now by Ger Gandley, who's the manager of Tiglin's Men's Residential Centre, and I see Gav here, maker of great coffee in the Cove, is here with us as well. To yourself first, Ger, what does it mean to be manager of Tiglin's Men's Residential Centre? What do you do?
Yeah, so we have a men's residential treatment centre in Ashford, and we obviously have a 9-month residential programme where the men come in and they rehabilitate from drugs, alcohol and other addictions, including kind of homelessness as well and all of that. So they come from a lot of different backgrounds and come into treatment and obviously rehabilitate at our centre for 9 months.
Yeah, and I mean, can I say, how smooth is that as a job?
Oh, it's difficult, but it's also very rewarding and very kind of inspiring to see people's lives being changed that were broken, and that's really encouraging and really inspiring for me.
And the people you look after, are they willing to change?
Yeah, in general, quite a lot of people that come to us are very, very broken. So they've had a lot of difficulties in their lives. They're coming from various traumas, and they've experienced quite a lot of challenging situations, and usually they're at the end of the road of where things are at for them. So they've hit all the negatives of being in prison maybe, or being homeless and being addicted to drugs for many years, and have never really successfully kind of gained any level of treatment. So they're usually very, very broken when they come to us, and they're generally speaking, they would want to change their lives.
And presumably they listen to you because you've been there to a large extent.
That's correct, yeah. So my own life was very much destroyed from drugs, and so I've been homeless and been addicted to drugs for many years, 15 years a drug addict, and I ended up homeless on the streets in 2006. I would know quite a lot of the people that come to us, and my whole life has been changed, and they see that, and they are inspired to kind of take some of that themselves.
Very good. Well done on all the work you're doing. We're also joined by Gavin Murphy, who's manager of Tiglin's social enterprise Rise of the Cove, and it's award-winning. And you're very welcome, Gav. What sort of work do you and your team do here?
Hey Declan, great to be on again. So we set the cafe up in 2021, and the main idea was just to give the guys coming through the programme a chance to, put something on their CV, because a lot of them would have been having an 18-month gap when they would have done the 9 months up in Ashford, and then a further 7 or 8 months down here. So when they're going out to an employer looking for a job, they have nothing on their CV. So we said, look, we'll open up a little cafe, give them a bit of employment, and get the community involved. And it really just snowballed from there, and within the first few weeks all the sea swimmers were coming in, and we just got massively popular, and at the moment we're employing 15 staff this summer.
Wow, you're in a fabulous location.
Amazing location. I mean, you couldn't handpick a better location to open a coffee shop in Wicklow. So we had an amazing location, great team, and just the community bought into it from day one. And it's great walking around the town here, and people say, we pop up to the Rise, we'll meet you at the Rise, and like 7:15, it's more than a 5:27. We had a queue out the door, people waiting to come in. So it's really lovely to see, and it's a great kind of boost for the guys to realise that this is not just a job. Like, this is something that will give you a chance to do other things. And a lot of my staff have already moved on and have now got themselves really good careers since they started with us 2.5 years ago.
Fantastic. And I can say this, and I think it was true probably about 20 years ago, there would have been a hell of a lot of prejudice and say, not going there, look at them, or whatever. And there would have been disparaging comments about the people in there. To actually see this in operation with the talent of people being brought out must be very inspiring for yourself and others.
Well, I mean, amazing. Like, when I first came to open it, Phil had asked me to come down and have a chat with the guys. I think there was 20 in a room, and initially I think most of them wanted to work there because they just thought it was going to be like a handy number. And I said, this is going to be run really well. Top end is there's going to be no messing. You have to be on time, dressed well. And by the time I finished the speech, I said, who wants to work here? And only 4 hands went up. And these were the 4 guys who really wanted the chance. So I really thought it was great to give those guys a crack, and 2 of them are still here 2.5 years later, one of them managing the cafe. So it's a really, really great opportunity for them if they want it.
Right, and it's been supported by the community, which is fantastic.
Massively, yeah.
Yeah, and any budding stars coming in?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of people. Actually, we have 9 individuals finishing out our residential side of our programme. So, there's a couple of individuals that are really, hopefully they will be very impactful for society.
Yeah.
And also be productive within the work environment. So,
excellent.
We're excited about that.
Yeah, well, that's just a testament to the great work that you all do here. So, well done. Continued success. The coffee is wonderful. Gavin Murphy, manager of the Rise of Cove. Thank you. And also thank you to Ger Gandley, manager of Tiglin.
Me in on East Coast FM.
With thanks to Codling Wind Park, supporting local communities and generating a greener Ireland.
East Coast FM.
It's the morning show at East Coast FM. We're live from Tiglin. And now we're joined on the programme by Conor Brown, who has his own personal experience of the impacts of drug use on individuals, on families and on communities. And Conor has witnessed firsthand the effect of drugs on these particular facets of life, having been a drug user who lost his family and ended up in the community homeless. You're very welcome, Conor. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. It's great to be back to talk about, well, a subject that's very close to my heart, you know.
Yeah, it will take us back to the beginning. Good background. How did you succumb to drugs?
So I'm actually 53 next month. I would have been in addiction for the past 20 years, you know, on and off, you know. So pretty much I spent the past 20 years in and out of addiction, from drinking alcohol, doing hard drugs, you know, cocaine, crack cocaine, tablets, you know, whatever we get your hands on, really, you know. That's what I done. I'd say I grew up in a really good family. I'm from Edenmore, from the north side of Dublin, and none of my family are in addiction, you know. It was pretty much myself who fell that way. So my own stuff and trying to deal with stuff in my own way and pushing down problems. And the only way I could push down problems and escape was through, you know, alcohol and drugs. And I would have been a functioning addict for quite a long time in my life, you know. I mean, addiction probably took me about, at the age of 40, so it's actually over 22 years now, you know. I would have functioned for quite a long time until I didn't function. It didn't work. Like, drugs and alcohol woke me for a while, where I had fun doing it, until it came to the realization that I couldn't go a day, I couldn't go an hour without having drugs or alcohol in my system, you know, to function throughout the day. I wasn't using drugs to have a good time anymore, you know. I wasn't drinking to have a good time anymore. Everything there was to keep me functioning throughout the day. Otherwise I would have been in serious withdrawals and serious sickness, you know.
And what was the reason that you turned to drugs? What was going on in your life?
I had a really good life growing up, you know. I mean, I had a loving family, and I'd done an awful lot. I think I would have told you before, is that I spent a lot of my life in martial arts and the fitness industry, which is quite ironic considering I turned to drugs and alcohol. I found myself being a people pleaser, you know. From a very early age, I found myself being a people pleaser and a yes person, and I wanted people to love me. I wanted people to like me. I wanted that validation that I was a good person, you know. I needed that every day, and I went down my way to help people, and without knowing that, you know, I was helping people, but I wasn't helping myself. All that people pleasing and, you know, looking for a validation of that I'm a good person, I'm a great person. I look for it in the wrong way, you know. I look for it outside of myself, from other people, from other ways of trying to fit in. And this is what drove me an awful lot to it, because I would have pushed down an awful lot of my emotions, anger, real feelings, honesty, you know. It all pushed it down, because I hated confrontation, ironically enough, again, with my martial arts, and I hated fighting, and I'm quite a sensitive person, to be honest with you, you know. So that was a big trigger for me growing up as a kid, you know, looking for that validation, because I couldn't get it from myself. And my mum and dad loved me, you know, but I come from a working class background. Like, they were out working, my dad was working, my mum was working, and the rest of my brothers and sisters, we were all at work, and so we didn't, you know. I mean, they're growing up in the 70s and 80s in working class Edenmore on the north side. That's what you're doing, you know. Like, when you're 16 and you get your first job, you get your pay packet, you give your mom half, the other half you spend on going out at the weekend to have a good time with your friends, you know.
Yeah.
And that just spoils, you know. We weren't taught how to live or to seek entertainment outside the pub or drinking in fields, you know.
And the alcohol, that was the initial addiction, was it?
It was my initial addiction. I would have drank, and I would have drank socially to have fun. I would have drank for a long time socially. But even with that, I mean, like, I smoked my first joint of hash when I was 13, and I took my first drug, acid, when I was 14, and then I was on the speed. Then I was on to ecstasy when I was 19, 20. Then I was cocaine. And this is all recreational use, because I would have held down jobs. I would have walked in the gym, in a local gym. I would have done all sorts of things. So I would have used at the weekends,
yeah,
you know, and gone back to work.
And then there was the consequences on the effect of your family and the community, and even on yourself, becoming homeless. To live through that time, was there anything going through your mind? Is there any light bulb moments? Or do you just go from day to day?
I have had some really good times using drugs and drinking, but I've had a lot of dark times. I've had more dark times than good times, you know, and that's the truth. And I I put my family through so much. I mean, I was on the missing persons list. You know, the police were looking for me. My nephews and nieces were walking the streets looking for me. They couldn't find their Uncle Conor, you know.
Conor, when was the turnaround? Because we're talking to you now. You're on several projects with Tiglin. When was the turnaround? And is there anything in particular that gave you, you know, the way forward?
So, in 2019, I was back. Because I've been homeless on different occasions in my life, you know. Different occasions I've been homeless and, you know, just walking the street and sleeping in, you know, alleys, bushes, parks, you know, underground car parks, you know. So I've been homeless numerous times in my life. So, in 2019, I ended up in a really bad way and I went to the hospital. So, to put a long story short, I ended up, you know, very, very sick. You know, I was sleeping in a park in Clongriffin, and there was a lady that used to come over me all the time. My family, again, they couldn't find me. That lady called an ambulance for me one morning because she would visit me in this park at the evening times and she'd give me a hot drink and she'd pray with me, you know, because I would not be in the city centre because I just didn't want to mix with people. I'd beg in the streets, go back to that park, use me drugs, drink me drink, and just stay in my own. That's all I done. I didn't have anything. I had no clothes. I had nothing, no phone. So I ended up going to Beaumont Hospital, but I ended up losing the power of my legs. I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand up. I ended up in a wheelchair because my central nervous system was shutting down. My sister, who is in the drug services, my sister Paula is an addiction counsellor. She now works. She works in Edenmore, you know, Edenmore Drug Intervention Team, which is actually now with Kilmwell, where she contacted Aubrey because I was in hospital in Beaumont in a very, very bad way. She contacted Aubrey McCarthy, who is the chairman of Tiglin. She knew Aubrey because of the work she does and the work that Aubrey does. And when you go to Tiglin, you got to apply. You got to go to the lighthouse. You got to put your phone number. You got to get on the waiting list. And through the grace of Aubrey, and through the grace of my sister, and through the grace of God, I got in there. I straight away, and I went to Tiglin, and I done my program in Tiglin, and it's there where I really began to meet the real Conor and find out why I was an alcoholic, why I was using, why I was people pleasing, why I was, you know, suicidal, why I was depressed, why I was all these things, because I didn't want to live anymore. And when I went to Tiglin is a Christian-based program, and they don't push it on me. But I needed some. I tried so many years to get well. I tried to do all sorts of things, you know. And I've been to meetings, AA and NA, and it works for people. It does, really does, but it didn't work for me. It's because I didn't surrender. If you want to get well when you're in addiction, you got to surrender. You got to be prepared to give everything up. Your friends, your family, you know, anything you know about yourself, you got to be prepared to give it all up, you know. Because, you know, Tiglin will strip you down and they'll build you back up again. They'll give you the tools that you need to survive. But Tiglin really, really showed me how to live with myself and own that part of me. You know, I spent 22 years of my life in addiction, but it doesn't define who I am today. It's a small part of me, you know?
Yeah. Kind of delighted to talk to you in the current situation where you are. And I suppose it's congratulations to having come on the journey to where you are now.
It's amazing because I live in Greystones now. I've done the Tiglin program in 2020. I live in Greystones now, and now my job in Greystones is I'm a youth worker. I work at the Greystones Youth Cafe. So I work mentoring the kids in the youth cafe. We do different projects together. You know, art workshops. You know. All sorts of stuff. We have movie nights and pizza nights. There's a lot of stuff going to go on this summer for the youth cafe, and I love it. I'm back teaching martial arts. I work with Tiglin now. Tiglin, you know, giving my life to God and now walking alongside Tiglin, giving back to the community. It's my life's completely changed. It's completely changed, you know.
Conor Brown, recovering addict, who is a resident of Carraig Eden and Tiglin. Thanks very much indeed, Conor. Great to talk to you.
Thanks so much. And you too. I hope you have a great day.
Glenn, I was a very broken person, both physically and mentally. So to avail of the full programme in Tiglin, which is bio, psychosocial, spiritual model, I asked to go in and was accepted. I had a broken ankle, so they're all inclusive. They include everybody. I went in, I did 10 months in British Bay, a programme for 10 months, and I needed every day that I was in it because I needed to work on myself. There's so much available in Tiglin. There's, you have the faith side of things, Christianity. You have behavioural models. Everything is looked at, your addiction, your background, your childhood, everything. So I went in there, you're given a key worker, you work on one-to-one with your key worker. So I needed every day that I was there. And I arrived there and I finished phase 3 and came down here to Greystones in phase 4.
So tell us about you before addiction.
Before addiction, my partner died of suicide 3 years ago, which broke me, and I was addicted to alcohol and pills. I couldn't give them up myself. My world was very small and dark. I had no quality of life. I couldn't socialise. My family were extremely distant and hurt by my addiction. So it was a very dark place.
Yeah, and was it of a consequence of the heartache in your life that you turned to abuse? It just contributed to that relapse. I would have been, or am, an alcoholic and an addict since I was about 18. So I've battled with addiction all my life. You're saying you are. Is that part of it all that you say, I acknowledge this is what I am?
100%, yeah. Yeah. And that's half the battle, it's the first step of AA is to, admit your addictions and that you're powerless over alcohol.
We've heard from others that we spoke to this morning who were in denial in some way that they were actually addicted. What about yourself?
Yeah, maybe given my age and experiences and life experience, it might be a little bit different from my angle. I'm 54 now. I have to actually say that twice because sometimes I forget. So yeah, I've had plenty of runs at it, shall we say. And, this one is positive because it's for the rest of my life,
Were you functioning?
In the end, no. I wasn't, no. Definitely not in the last 5 years, no. I didn't work. Basically, my day was just, consumed with how I would get my drug, and that was it, nothing else really.
You worked close to the provision of these services, so I suppose that was a help, that you knew what was in store for you, should you say,
I did.
I want to be helped.
Yes, yeah. But given being in the circle I was in, it was extremely humbling to hold up my hand and to say, please help. I need help, rather than me being the helpaholic helping other people. Yeah. So that was a big one. Yeah.
How difficult is it? I suppose it's the physical voice in your head as well as the emotional desire to change. Tell us about that. Yeah, I'd say the physical voice would be in your head would be louder. And that's where, morals, principles, consequences don't come into play. They don't matter. The physical voices just get what you need, and that's where other people. Would you describe it as craving in some sort? 100%, yeah. It's a craving that you wouldn't, as an alcoholic and an addict, you can't dismiss. You'll just go with it. Yeah. So, what would you say to other women out there if they were in my position? Yeah. Put up your hand and get help. You cannot do it alone. Somebody has yet to come back and say, hooray, I've done it on my own, successfully, And somebody at your stage of life, we'll say. Yeah. I won't say the number. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah. Do you think there's a difference of, approach to recovery? For me personally,
yes, this time you have a more mature outlook. You know, when your mind becomes clearer and when you start into your recovery, things just look a bit different, and other things are not as important, you know, as your recovery. So maybe that's my age, yes.
Yeah, and you're looking to the future, no doubt. I hear that you're treading the boards. I am,
Declan. I was
Tell us more.
Last night. Yeah, well, I'm in
the Whale.
In the Whale, yes, the Whale Theatre, which have been very good to us in Tiglin, always providing us with you know, shows to go to, and eventually I took part in the drama group and ended up being in the Americana play, which is on at the moment.
Yes. I hope you weren't overshadowed by Laura Wood.
I'm afraid I was. And but she deserves all of it. Yeah, she's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure any praise that's given to yourself is well deserved too. Nicola, thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Declan.
And for advocating there as well for Tiglin. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Nicola Deegan there, recovering addict who's using the services at Tiglin. We're also joined by Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly. Morning, Stephen. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, Declan. Welcome to Greystones. Great to see you here.
It's
a beautiful sunny day.
And it's a beautiful part of the world as well, this part of Greystones. Tiglin, you're obviously familiar with this because your name's been mentioned on several occasions, together with other public representatives, about doing great work in order to sustain Tiglin and make sure that they've, I suppose, you know, they deliver the services that people expect.
Yeah, I've been working with Aubrey and Phil and the Tiglin team now for over a decade. For me, the people like Nicola who avail of the services of Tiglin, they are some of the strongest people I've ever met. They're some of the bravest people I've ever met. They've gone through some of the toughest things people can go through in terms of recovering from addiction, and not just that, but everything that goes around addiction. And I've met with many of them. I've listened to their stories over many years, and honestly, I think people like Nicola and the people who come through Tiglin, I think they are inspirational. And I think Aubrey will be getting a big head now, but honestly, Aubrey, Phil, who's the chief executive, and the team in Tiglin are some of the most amazing people I've met. They're incredibly humble, and so it's a great honour. You know, those of us in politics are in politics for one very simple reason, which is to help, which is to make our communities better and to help people. And we're in Carraig Eden here. Aubrey came to me a few years ago and he said, look, we want to buy this, but the deal is stalled. There's a multi-million euro gap between what the state is offering. And it was a church with a German origin who were selling. And so Aubrey, Phil and myself spent a long time working this through, and ultimately I sent out an invite. I was in opposition at the time, and I sent out an invite to the leaders of the church and met them in the Dáil, or met them in the Oireachtas one night, and we spent hours together. And I had read up on their mission, on their Christian mission, and I obviously am very familiar with Tiglin. We spent hours talking about how Tiglin and what the work they do lines up so well with the ethics of the church. And I said, look, I need you to lower your price by about €1 million. And then I went to Owen Murphy, was housing minister at the time, and I sat with him, and Owen and I go back a long way, and I said to Owen, I need you to put another €1 million on the table. If the church is willing to go down by $1 million, and if the state will come up, I think there's a deal to be done. And huge credit to the church leaders. They didn't have to do it. It's €1 million that they would have got on the open market or more. And huge credit to Owen Murphy. He put the money on the table. And we did the deal. There's a lady called Jackie working in Wicklow County Council. I think she might have moved to a different council now, but Aubrey and myself worked very closely with Jackie. And we got the deal over the line, and it was fantastic. The easier one was as Minister for Health, when Aubrey rang me up and he said, right, Cool na Graina, we'd like to take that. And why I really wanted to help on Cool na Graina, not only because of the support that we provide very, very well quite rightly for Tiglin, Cool na Graina was to be a women's centre. And as you know, I've been pushing women's healthcare and an agenda of women's healthcare from day one. And so it fit not just with Tiglin, but it fit with, we have to have these facilities for women. And so we did the same. We worked, Aubrey and Phil and myself worked very closely together. We pulled the Department of Health into it. We pulled the HSC into it. We made sure that it was not just something we wanted to do, but that met the various requirements, and we got that over the line. So it's been fantastic. But you know, Declan, when you're working with people like Aubrey, Phil and the Tiglin team, and when you meet Nicola and people like Nicola and so many others, it's a privilege to be able to help. It really is. I think these guys, both the residents and the workers, I think they represent the very best of us here in Wicklow. I think they're an inspiration. Our next step, which Aubrey, Phil and I have a devious and cunning plan. We want to see the money that is going to people when they're living in addiction, we want to see that moving. So let's say you've got someone living in a house or an apartment in Dublin. They're living in addiction. They might be getting housing assistance payment. They might be getting job seekers. They might get all sorts of supports from the state. When they move to Tiglin, the state just stops paying. The money doesn't move with them. And what Phil and Aubrey and I have been working on is if we can find a way, and I'm talking to Heather Humphreys about it now, it's between my department, Heather's department, possibly Helen McEntee's. We want that money or some version of that money to move, because if we can do that, I believe, and the Tiglin team believe, we can probably double the residential places that we have available. One of the things I know as Minister for Health is in terms of addiction services, some of them work really well. I've never seen a more successful model than Tiglin, and some of them don't work. And it's not that people aren't trying; they're full of passionate people. But some of the models, the less intensive models, they just don't provide enough support for enough time for people to reset their lives. And that's why I think these residential programs, and they are long term. You know, you could have people in Tiglin for 9 months or more, and then you could have people here in Carraig Eden or in Coolnagraina for many, many months. These are long term, but people need that time. They need that support to reset their lives. And I haven't got the figures. Aubrey obviously will have the figures in terms of the success rates for people who come through Tiglin and can get on with their lives with no or minor relapses. They're miles ahead of a lot of the other services.
Demands? Because obviously you're a local TD in Wicklow and in Greystones, but as Minister for Health, you're responsible for 26 counties and the challenges that are all there. So there's other projects around the country. I mean, there's not a limitless budget. There's other demands that maybe somebody can put, a sustainable case on the table for, I don't know, Connemara or Clare or somewhere. I mean, the pull on resources.
Yeah, we do, and we've done a big funding this year for a facility in Galway, for example, and there's facilities in Cork, there's facilities around the country. There will always be other demands, but I was talking to one of the Tiglin guys a few years ago, and he was telling me about his life in addiction. And he made the point to me, he said, Stephen, this is what I was up to. It was a chaotic world he was living in. He said, imagine the cost the cost of him, and this was him saying it, the kind of things that he was involved in. He said it was very good value for money to provide these services for him, and he hasn't just got on with his life, but he's a leading voice in Tiglin. I know from other people who go through, they take an awful lot of comfort in. This guy came from a really, really chaotic and difficult place, so it's the right thing to do for people, and it works, Declan. That's the thing. But even if we want to just take a kind of a cold analytical economic analysis, for me it is money very well spent. So what I want to see is more places like Carraig Eden, more places like Coolnagraina, more supports, and as you rightly say, not just for Tiglin here in Wicklow, but for Tiglin and organisations like Tiglin, where they can show the results, where they can show the high success rates. We should be doing that. We are. We can always do more right around the country. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for dropping in this morning.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
That is Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly. We're live at IE.
The Morning Show with Declan Meehan on East Coast FM.
With thanks to Codling Wind Park, supporting local communities and generating a greener Ireland.
East Coast FM.
Morning show at East Coast FM, live from Tiglin in Greystones, and we're going to have a bit of a discussion now of various aspects of what we've been talking about all morning with Aubrey McCarthy, founder of Tiglin, Rachel Harper, board member and volunteer at Tiglin, and Jay Bobinach, who is communications manager at Tiglin. So all from Tiglin, all of course have other roles elsewhere, but we're delighted to see them in this, to tell us all about Tiglin this morning when they join us here on the programme. So, first of all, before we get down to that, Rachel Harper, we're familiar with you. We're in fact talking during the week about different things, but we're familiar with you as regards schools and phones, etc. in Greystones. But here you are at Tiglin. So tell us about why you got involved and what your role is.
So I've been a volunteer with Tiglin since 2008, and now I'm a board member the last 2 years. So I suppose what I'd say there is once you get involved in Tiglin and you see the positive effect it has on so many lives and just, what it's all about, it really gets your heart. And it keeps you wanting to do more within the charity. So yeah, very passionate about it.
Yeah, and what do you do?
So my role, I suppose, over the last couple of years, I've been helping with the No Books Cafe, and more recently now, my role would be regarding integration in the community. So I suppose with the Ukrainian Centre there, I've been a part of helping the children find places both at primary and secondary level, and integrating the families in the school communities as well, and getting them familiar with the way of the Irish educational system, and then more recently that helping with the youth cafe, the Tiglin Youth Cafe that's just recently opened, so helping just getting that going and setting that up and getting the community behind us.
Right, and of course you have Cruinniú na Nóg and some involvement in that at the weekend. We met some of the Ukrainian children who are over, students who are over, displaced obviously in Ukraine, and what contribution they're making in Ireland. What's the challenges that you face?
For the children from Ukraine?
For generally, in the job of, not just integration, but other challenges too with education.
So I suppose some of the challenges, I suppose, would be just, keeping open conversation with the children, with the families, getting them to open up if they have any concerns or they have any worries about integrating here in Ireland, So I suppose when the families came and when the students came initially, they didn't know anything about Ireland. For some of them it was their first time out of Ukraine. So I'll never forget when they first arrived, they arrived on a Saturday and they all wanted to start school on a Monday. So we actually opened up the school on the Sunday to show them around, and I said to them, look, would you like to just initially start off with half a day? But they were so keen to do the full day, and to them they just wanted some of that stability, that normality. So, getting them in and integrating them and getting them settled and just, feeling safe and feeling secure. It was a bit of a challenge at the beginning, but I have to say, these people, they're remarkable. We've learned so much from them and they're so resilient, so it has been a real pleasure.
Very good. Well, thank you for contributing this morning and coming along to us. Aubrey, back to you as well. I suppose, the barriers that people face who are living with addiction, they're homeless, and what barriers are in their way making the transition to normality, we call it?
I've been listening to the interviews with the different people, and Brendan and Nicola, and they talked about shame. They talked about how they were embarrassed of their addiction, and that prevented them from dealing with their recovery. So interesting, when I was a young boy and my family there was addiction in the family and there was chaos, I remember being ashamed. You didn't want people to know. Whereas now, I would fly it as a flag. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's something that happens in life, and I think every family in Ireland out there has somebody either extended or very close that has been in addiction. And when Minister Donnelly was speaking there about when we first pushed for Carraig, I was thinking of my own family members. I was thinking of people who are vulnerable and need a transitioning space for recovery. And I remember I pestered that chap, Stephen Donnelly. I got his mobile number, and I'd say he tried to block me. And I pestered and pestered and pestered. And he was like a dog with a bone in order to get Carraig over the line. And I think when the likes of the Minister for Health sees the programme that you offer at Tiglin, it changes people's lives. We realise that you can't change the strength of the wind or the direction, but you can certainly change the sails and the direction of the sails. And that's what we do at Tiglin. And that's why even when Minister Donnelly was saying about Coolnagrania, he didn't have to be pestered too much in order to go with that one. And now he's working on the new initiatives. So when you see that, local politicians who actually see the guys and the girls coming through our programme, being part of Aerogue, being part of the Tidy Towns, being part of the Drama Society, then you see community. It works for recovery.
But the barrier to people themselves who find themselves on the street, like Jay and his brother Alan, and they're in the Phoenix Park, and where do we go next?
Well, one of the first places I brought them to, I got the two of the guys, they were our service users at the Lighthouse. We got them into suits and we brought them up to Oris an Uachtaráin for a Christmas lunch. And I introduced them to Sabina Higgins and President Michael D. And Sabina turned to Jay Bobanach and said, "And where do you live?" And he said, "Well, I'm actually a neighbour of yours." He was in the bushes outside the Oris. So since that, President Higgins and Sabina Higgins have asked the guys up. They've had lunches there. They've been at garden parties. And when the guys, the girls that come to our programme see the authenticity of Tiglin, and also even politicians and presidents, I think it makes a difference. And President Higgins, when he was in this building, what you're at now, he went on RTE News and he said, every council in Ireland should have a Carraig. And he said, it's for people who have had their participation in life disrupted for whatever reason. And that could be gambling, that could be alcohol, that could be whatever sort of abuse. But we need to have facilities that help those type of people. And that's what we're doing here. And it works.
Yeah, but they're fortunate, many of those people, like Jane, and they came across Tiglin. There are many people who mightn't come across, and they're, floating in the wilderness,
But Declan, I know, do you ever hear the phrase, when nobody's shouting, even a whisper gets heard? So when I started this, I'm not a professional. I have a transport business in Kildare. So if I can make a difference in this small area, every county in Ireland can make a difference. And are you looking for Tiglin flags everywhere? Absolutely not. So it's to try and mirror this model nationwide. The longevity of the programme works. The holistic part of the programme works. And I remember watching Shane McGowan's funeral, and the priest was talking about Shane, and then his wife Victoria got up and she spoke about, I think it was a verse from Corinthians, about faith, hope and love. But the greatest of these is love. And she said, love extravagantly. That's what Shane did. And I think if you can put a tagline on Tiglin, we love extravagantly, through our services, through our volunteers, through our youth work, even through our cafe, and even through Miss Harper.
Right, okay. Fair play. To be back to Rachel soon. Jay Bobanach, who is Communications Manager at Tiglin. And Jay, you've told us your story earlier on, arriving off the plane from Croatia. And, you're just in Dublin because we spoke English in Dublin, seen as an opportunity. But you'd nowhere to stay and lived in the Phoenix Park, etc. So what do you think are the biggest barriers? What did you find when you arrived in Dublin, apart from being unfamiliar with Dublin?
Well, I think I get your question. I think people live everywhere, all around the world. And I think we came, obviously, to Dublin in search of opportunity. So, obviously, when we came with nothing. So we had to start from beginning. So the barriers that we personally faced were perhaps coming in, not knowing the system, having to register, having to figure out how things work, and obviously starting off sleeping on the streets. It's not an ideal start, but I would say that we managed to bridge those gaps with the services that were out there. And I think what you're saying, it's a fair question. People can live in rural Ireland and can live anywhere, and maybe they won't be able to reach those opportunities. But in people that we work with, there's always a common theme, and the common theme is background of trauma, background of dysfunctionality, addiction, and it takes a while in order to sort of bridge those gaps. That's why there's a real structured program here. People manage to sort of overcome some of those things, and then there's a key concept we talk about. We call it social capital. So basically, when we came to Ireland, myself and my brother, you could argue that we had low social capital. We didn't have history of work. We didn't have any savings. We didn't have anything. So the social capital is built, and Tiglin is just one of the organizations. It's not a nationwide thing that's everywhere, but we try to make impact that we can. Beyond that, we can't control it, and everyone has a specific set of circumstance issues they need to overcome, and by building on different aspects of their life, such as the personal well-being, such as signing up with have a PPS number, work, pay tax, education, meet people, go out in the community, like Nicola was saying. These are all different things that are buried, and they're very personal. In my experience, and you could say that it's real life experience, I can say a lot of good things. The system itself was very good to me, and Tiglin itself, a private organization, was also very good to me. So,
but at any time were you tempted to maybe find solace in abuse of some sort?
Myself, not personally, no, because perhaps I would have my own way of looking at the world. I would have seen people who abuse things, and I concluded that that's not the way for me. So,
but you could understand how people do, I suppose.
I do. I think oftentimes we can see this as a simple +2 and it isn't like that. I think I've seen people who could have taken on an opportunity and have done well, but they have personal issues, personal traumas that they haven't dealt with.
Right, and they brought that to you want to just, before we finish on this?
Do you know what I was thinking, just while Jay was talking about? I think what Tiglin does is we spot talent. The world, in chaos, you see somebody on the street, you don't see any talent. What we do is we look and see what the talent is. Our CEO, when people come in looking for help, he doesn't ask what drugs you're on or have you any crimes. He asks, where do you want to be in 2 years' time? And then how can we get you there? So you've interviewed Alan Bobenak. Alan Bobenak came to the bus, and he's Jay's twin brother, and he wanted to get into education. Now, he'd no leaving cert, he'd no equivalent or whatever. So we invested in him. And I remember we got him into Coolostodulig in Coolock, and he was doing a level 5. And he failed one module. That means you have to repeat the year. So I went to the lecturer with his permission. I said, listen, can we sort of look at this? He's living on the streets. With his permission, I told her he's studying in McDonald's at night time. And she said, unfortunately, no, he shouldn't be in the kitchen if he can't stand the heat. I went on LinkedIn and I got a Dr. Joe Collins, who's involved in SETU. And I told him about these two guys. And I said, can we try and give them a chance? Both of them are now on their second master's degree. They got an award for academic excellence last year from Simon Harris, and this is a guy who failed a level 5. So I'm saying the same person, given the supports, housing, services, therapies, etc., these guys can kick the ball out of the park, and they're the testimonies and the stories you're hearing today, and that's what makes the difference.
And Rachel, support groups, other treatments, the community, how can that help people in a challenging situation?
Yeah, I think the whole thing, it's about open conversation. It's about, really getting across to everybody, look, there's no stigma behind addiction. It can happen, any of us. We're all one step away from it. It doesn't matter what family you come from or what background, we're all one step away from it. So I think it's really nurturing that in the community where we have open conversation, whether you're a young person or an adult, and you feel there's addiction in your past, then that you're open in the early stage to talk about it and to seek help. Then I think the second thing is about education around this whole area. I really do feel strongly, in secondary schools there should be more education here, and equipping children, and letting them know rather than veering away from difficult conversations. I think it's good to talk to young people about gambling and about the challenges around that and how addictive gambling can be, and drugs and alcohol, and not shying away from those conversations. And I really think equipping these young people going forward, and also talking to their parents and equipping their parents, to have these conversations with their children. So I think that's what we can do as a community. We can kind of nurture this environment. And I think Tiglin